Well, good morning and welcome to Stroke of Genius podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Ambla. Today is a TBI survivor story, and I've got Benjamin Hinton on the show today. You know, this man has went from survivor to thriver, and I want today to really focus. I really want you to know that you can thrive. You don't just survive. So let's get into it. I want you to meet Benjamin. Hold on.
The Stroke of Genius podcast, hosted by brain aneurysm and stroke survivor Aaron Avila, sharing the experiences of survivors and CEOs. This is your destination for inspiration.
Hey, good morning, Benjamin.
Good morning. How are you?
Really good. Welcome to the show. I'm really grateful you're here, bro.
Yes, I really appreciate it. So glad that we're connected, and it's a great thing about social media and sharing our messages that we get to connect with people on a global scale and to hopefully impact others.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I really want people to know, because I don't know if you know this, but I've watched it for years. And I've seen your speech, I've seen your live streams, because we'll get into this more, but you actually use live streaming to inspire people. And I've watched you, and your speech is just night and day different. I mean, when you first started and where you're at today, but let's get right into it. Where do you live, bro?
I live just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a small town about a half an hour or so from Pittsburgh, depending on traffic during different times of the day.
Great. Well, that's really great. So we only got 30 minutes together, probably less than that now. But let's get right into it. You survived a TBI. And for those that don't know, this is the Stroke of Genius podcast. We welcome all types of brain injury survivors, whether it be brain aneurysm, stroke, or TBI. If you are a brain injury survivor, you're welcome. Let's come to our show. Sorry. We're about to hear Benjamin's story, and it's pretty amazing. But Benjamin, describe for me what your life was like before your TBI.
Before my TBI, I was in my late 20s, and I was in a place in my life where I thought I was heading in the direction that I was meant to go, or that I was pivoting correctly. And I thought I was happy, and I was married. Oh, sorry, I was engaged. My wife, now wife, we were engaged when it happened, and I was on the career path. I wanted to be a collegiate basketball coach, and just you could say normal, for that age. Would go out and socialize with friends, and was had what I thought was a passion and a goal in coaching. And life was good, but we were 6 months, about 6 months into finalizing our wedding plans before it happened.
Wow. Now, let's tell people how you actually sustained your TBI. How did you get it?
So January 9th of 2013, working out has always been a passion of mine. And so I used different coaches, different trainers over the years, and to go into different either gyms, whether they're, chain gyms like Gelly Fitness, etc. But so I was working with a personal trainer for a while. And so that morning, I guess I'd called off that morning, and I didn't feel like going in. I wasn't feeling too well. I was a little bit under the weather. My now wife, but at the time, when she was teaching, she still is, but she left for the day for work, and I stayed home, and I was doing some different things around the house. I was home alone doing some chores, etc. And I was texting her a little bit, and then texting several other of my friends. And apparently around 11:30 that day, my text messages stopped because I fell down a flight of stairs. And so no one obviously thought anything of it. because they were busy at work or they were, doing their own things. The people that I was texting, they, had no reason for concern or anything like that. They were busy. And so, but I was fighting consciousness in and out for about 4 to 5 hours. And they say that because my communication had stopped around 11:30, and my fiance at the time, again now married, she found me when she came home into the basement, and just in from the garage, she walks in and apparently found me, and called my best friend, who's actually a medical doctor, and asked him some questions because there was some blood on the floor, and she wasn't sure what was going on, what had happened. And then while they were on the phone, he heard me gagging, and he said to get me to the hospital immediately. So she did. And at the time that she found me, I was in my underwear. So, I mean, it's who knows what happened. I mean, we know I fell down a flight of stairs where there was a fall, and then I had attempted to, fight consciousness in and out, and I don't remember any of it. So this is all a lot of what I, have been told. But I was in my underwear on the couch, and there's a laundry basket and laundry clothes all over the place. So the police and everyone that, they came, the ambulance, and they got me to the hospital, where I was there for 18 days. And I really don't remember a whole lot of the first 11 days. And then after that, the 18th day on has been my journey that I can claim, or that I remember. Because up until that point, I don't remember the actual events other than what I've been told.
Well, I think it's pretty amazing. You just said you laid on the floor for like 4 or 5 hours, didn't you?
Yeah. There are so many things when you use hindsight, or you reflect in 2020 vision, all of that stuff. And after because I shouldn't have survived, and I've been told that from the doctors. And I mean, hearing the story, even I'm like, wow, how did I to survive that? I was alone. How many times did I fall? Like, what exactly happened? And because the basement was concrete floor that I had fallen into. So for me, I was a young adult, but again, working out, being physically fit, being active has always been a passion of mine. I've always had a drive to be physically fit, or I've always had a drive to challenge myself. So, in my opinion, that's a God-given talent, and that's something that God provided me in this. What I shouldn't have survived, I did, thanks to Him. So, what was my worst day? As you know, we'll talk about the journey, but what was my worst day, in many ways, has been my best day, because I get to share, what was a mess is a message, or what was my adversity and has been is someone else's blessing. So it is a miracle, and I thank God that I survived it. And there's just so many parts of the puzzle that go along with the story that kind of tells, the big picture of why did I survive, and what's to come from that and everything.
Yeah, it's funny, Benjamin. You and I are very similar. My purpose in life was actually created by the brain aneurysm stroke, and yours were created by the TBI. So, hey, we found our purpose, Joe. It's great. We get to help people. It's something better, and But what's strange? Well, you and I talked about this in the green room earlier, but you actually were feeling not too well before you fall. You actually got in sick from work, didn't you?
Yeah. So that morning, and this is actually probably the only thing that, after I've been not told, well, I was told that I made the phone call and I called off that day, but I can actually barely remember that morning, because I try to wake up early, and I wake up early, but I try to work out early and do things, take care of myself, and kind of get ready for the day. And so I do remember that morning, being slightly under the weather, as far as like I maybe had like a dry throat, or didn't really sleep well, whatever. And I do remember that I saw the alarm clock, and then I knew that, and I made the call pretty early that morning to my personal trainer. And I actually did go back to bed for a while. And that part I remember. And then after that, there's a huge gap. But yeah, I wasn't feeling too well, and it's just little. So when I fell, we don't know. Was I dehydrated? Was did I have a stroke, or did I have something happen? Because I had some medical complications when I was born as a baby, and I had a virus that's been triggered off and on my entire life. But we don't know any answers. And at this point in the journey, I kind of don't want to know the answers, you know.
Right. Doesn't matter.
But yeah, so that was very interesting that I didn't quite feel good that day, and I called off, and then like with that just big gap of what exactly happened, because I had a lot of facial paralysis for a really long time, and I still have a little bit of facial paralysis in my speech, obviously, which I really appreciate the compliment that it's gotten better. My cognition's gotten better. So many things have improved, but initially, when those things were present, that helped the doctors try to make sense of what happened, or try to put together a diagnosis of the cause. So.
Yeah, Benjamin, we're going to get into your running in this minute, but because I really want to make sure that people don't know that you compete, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But how long did you say you were in the hospital for?
I believe I stayed in the hospital for 18 days. Um, and being from Pittsburgh, if you've heard, or a lot of people have heard, that it's a sports town, and people say bleed black and blue. Sorry, bleed black and gold. And so it was during the NFL playoffs, and I do remember actually some of the things I started to remember as I was coming out of things in the hospital was it was during the playoffs. And so being in there for 18 days, I remember some of just, some little highlights, if you will, of what was going on in the playoffs that year, and a couple different plays and things like that. But yeah, so, I remember that just very briefly, but it is amazing to me what, the mind wants you to remember, and what it doesn't, based on maybe something was too traumatic, and that's why you don't remember the experience and things like that. So yeah, it's a very interesting part of the story.
Yeah, that it's funny, the brain, our mind as human being, and I can't remember my brain aneurysm or my stroke in the very beginning. I can't remember anything. So I think it's a protection mechanism of the human brain that makes sure it doesn't remember traumatizing things. But the reason that you're here is because I find it hard to identify the difference between a stroke survivor and a TBI survivor. You go through very similar things to stroke people, but how do you describe that time of your life? You wake up in the hospital. If you're like me, you wake up and you go, "Man, what happened?" And you look at all the machines that go on, baby. Were you scared during that time in the hospital?
Was I scared? I really wasn't scared, because I'm very stubborn, and when I came out of everything in the hospital and was starting to regain more the ability to talk more and engage more with friends and family and things like that, and remember things more often. I've been told, and I kind of remember that in particular. There's a time I remember that, again, and this is a blessing in disguise, but I'm a competitive person. I'm driven. I've always, challenged myself, or I've always felt, I don't want to say chip on the block, because that's a very commonly used thing, but I mean, it is how I felt. And so whenever I was in the hospital, no one likes being in the hospital, and no one likes also being told what to do. So I remember that I wasn't at a point in my journey that I knew how bad the brain injury was, or I knew how bad things were. I just wanted to get up, get home, or I just wanted to get up and get moving, get active. And so there was a time where the nurse wanted me to walk around the hospital floor a little bit for some, physical rehab and things. And I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to, I just wasn't in the mood to be, I don't know if you want to say, babysat or anything like that, but I just didn't want to have someone, tell me what to do, or I didn't want to just be a part of that. And so finally, my friend, who actually is a doctor that my wife had called that day, he was visiting me that day as well. and he knows how to push my buttons and things. And so he challenged me to just get it done. He's like, look, the quicker you do this, the quicker you go home. And you got to put in the work. And it's not that I didn't want to do the work. It's not that I was depressed or down. I just was, frustrated and being stubborn. So I remember that I got up with the nurse, and when we went into the hallway, I just took off. And I took off, and I started walking as quick as I can, because I just wanted to be like, you know what, I'll prove you wrong, or, I just want to get this over with. So we were supposed to walk side by side. Because again, I didn't know at the time that I was classified as an at-risk to fall. I didn't understand the damages that were there. So I was in the mindset of who I am at heart, and that's being driven, not being told what to do. So not knowing these things, I just did what I habitually or naturally just would do. And so anyway, when the lap was done, I apparently was wobbling all over the place, and kind of walked into some things here and there. But when we got back in the room and we sat back down, the nurse was exhausted, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I could barely keep up with you." And in my mind, I was like, "See, I told you, it's over. Let's get this done with." So I didn't know what I didn't know at the time as far as how bad I was. And so it wouldn't be until I got back into, I guess you could say, real world, but got back into a home environment, that when I started doing things or trying to do things that I wanted to do, that's when, it kind of hit me, right? No pun intended, but hit me like a ton of bricks of wow, I am a brain injury survivor. Wow, I can't do this. So, that's part of the journey as well, is putting myself in moments of me finding out what happened, or me coming to peace with that, as opposed to being told with it. So much of the journey is about experiences and about accepting things, and that's what eventually happened to me. Trial and error as I got out of the hospital, got home, and started finding out things on my own.
Yeah, Benjamin, you bring up a great point. I never, honestly, bro, I never really thought about it. So many times we're given labels in the hospital. You can't do this. You never walk. You'll never speak. I was told I would die. I would never speak. I would be a drooling, babbling mess. I was told, I was labeled by the hospital employees. And I don't know that necessarily bad that you're oblivious, basically, to what they were saying, what they labeled you as, and it didn't define you. So many times, stroke, TBI, brain injury, the people let it define them. And I watched you, and I've watched many other people. We don't let it define us. And I think it's really great. Kudos to you, bro, for not letting it define you.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly it. When you're when you're in the hospital and something happens, like a stroke, a heart attack, or whatever has happened, my brain injury, when you're told and when you're labeled, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, it doesn't matter. You don't like to be labeled, because when we're labeled, we, society or whatever, however it happened, but we feel weak. We feel broken. We feel, we're frustrated. No one likes to be told what to do. And so if no one likes to be told what to do, no one likes to be told, a label. And so it's not until you are able to take that label and use it to your advantage, but when you're given that label in the hospital, especially, and maybe it's the way it's presented. So I was an at-risk to fall. And so being at risk to fall, and I was at risk to fall for 6 months, and I had to do rehab in the hospital, and, doctors came to see me, all of these things. Every single time, it was kind of like, you're broken. This is who you are now. And so it was never a transition, or I thought it took a while from the transition, and that was kind of a personal thing of, okay, this is the diagnosis, or this is the label, okay, but how can I use it? How can it benefit me? How can I make the best of it, as it being told with the label? It's not just you're at risk to fall, but then it's what follows. You're at risk to fall, so you can't do A, B, and C. I have a 2-year-old and I have a 7-year-old. They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like to be told, you're a child, you can't do this. And that's kind of how I was at the hospital. And I'm not blaming anybody, but that's just kind of the system, and that's just sort of the way that these things kind of go.
Yeah, I think we stumbled on something big, bro. I'll be honest with you. I never really gave it much thought. But when they I'm telling you out there, survivor, don't let anybody label you. Don't even let your own mind label you and limit you. Don't let people tell you this and that. You have to discover it for yourself. And now we're going to discover Benjamin's passion. Because I've seen it. He has went from falling down the flight stairs, brain injury, traumatic brain injury. I'm assuming you spent some time in rehab. And
Yeah,
now you run, bro. You're doing triathlons and stuff, aren't you? Tell me about what you're doing now, running.
yeah. So, again, I was blessed that because my passion before my brain injury and where my life was, I was always active. And growing up, I always wanted to play in the NBA. I always wanted to be a professional basketball player. And then that transitioned into college, going from, okay, I can't play this as a career, but I want to be a coach. And so when that transition happened, it became very analytical. It became now I'm in love with the game. I loved playing the game, but now I'm in love with the mental side of the games, all of the ins and outs. And those things served me after my brain injury because um, cognitively, that's kind of what helped me get back. But on a physical standpoint, doing the rehab at home, I remember when we came home and did the rehab. Um, it was, I think, after the first home visit that they said, okay, well, you can do everything we're telling you to do. So we're going to have to get you to an outpatient rehab. So we did the outpatient rehab. And the first time we were there, my wife was with me. They were going over the exercises. And the lady told my wife, she's like, well, I think that he's probably going to get these exercises perfected by next week. And my wife was like, yeah, because he's obsessed. He's obsessed with working out. He's obsessed with working. And because I always knew intuitively, or the gifts that I've been giving, or gifts that I've been given, that I was going to put in the work. So you can't be given, you can't go to physical therapy, whether you have to go inpatient or you're driven there, or whatever the case may be. But you can't go there on a Thursday, do the work Thursday, and not resume the work again until next Thursday. You have to do it every single day. You have to do it on your own when no one's looking. But I've always done that. I've always enjoyed that. I've always been driven. So the physical side of things, I made improvements quickly. Now the cognitive side of things was where I would struggle because when I wouldn't get things and my mind wouldn't do what I wanted to do, and I already had the labels of that I was a brain injured or that I was at, or, if I heard things that, oh, you're on you have a third grade reading level or your math level is this far, right? So that became the enemy within, right? Not what I could do physically, but what I can do and can't do because of my labels. So the cognitive thing is what took a long time. And so cognitively, when you've been labeled and you're struggling and you're not doing the things you're able to do, because I had the brain injury when I was adult, and now I'm older, and in my mind, I'm like, I should be able to do A, B, and C. And I wasn't knowing or I wasn't accepting the fact, well, I can't do A, B, C because of the brain injury. I was just stuck on, I'm 30 years old now, or I'm 31 years old now. I should be able to do A, B, and C. And so the process cognitively became, and then using that with my strength of working out, being driven, and that kind of stuff, and putting the work, the cognitive side of it became things like with personal development and my spiritual development, things like going from guilt to grace. There was so many. I would have made more progress sooner in a whole journey if I would have given myself grace sooner. But again, it's hindsight, and I accept it, and I'm okay with it. It's always gonna be part of my journey, my story. But that's something that came along, with the trial of errors, giving myself grace. So learning how to, on a personal level, take care of yourself. And again, we talked about this the other day, especially with adults who have had strokes or have had things where most of the time, or a lot of patients, like myself included, or male figures, or even women who have risen families and things like that. They have kids, they have jobs, whatever their roles are. We always take care of other people first. So when you've had a stroke or you've had a heart attack or you've had a brain injury, a huge traumatic event, and you're forced to take care of yourself, and that's not what you're used to, you're going to have a lot of issues or a lot of things come up, because it's just not new to you. So you have to create new habits, and those new habits, though, thankfully, will create a new life for you as well.
I'm loving this. I mean, two things now. We've talked about. Don't be labeled. You don't let people label you, limit you by labeling you. And then don't let circumstances or your whatever challenges stop you from moving forward. Now, I'm assuming, might be wrong, but I watch you jog. I've seen you jog. Tell me what you're doing. You went from survivor to thriver. What happened? I mean, what are you doing now jogging? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I started jogging in 2013, which is the year I had the brain injury. And before the fall, before I had my brain injury, I had signed up for my first half marathon. And I was excited about it because I actually, this is another story, but I'd signed up for a half marathon. I was training for that and eventually wanted to do marathons because I thought that the moment I was in my life, that because I couldn't play basketball as a career, but because I was active and because I had certain passions, I'm like, I want to be an Olympian. And so, and this started before the brain injury. So after the brain injury, I was going to give it all up because of the labels and because of, what I couldn't do. But something happened, and I decided to do the half marathon. And the half marathon was, I think, 6 weeks after the brain injury, or when I got home. But I did it because I needed to have something that proved to me what are or are not my limitations. And so I did my first half marathon, and the greatest thing about it was, and you could argue it was my best race ever as far as enjoyment, is that I had no expectations, you know, and so I was free. When I say I had no expectations, I did it and I wasn't labeled. As I was doing it for 13 miles, it was just about finishing the 13 miles. So I accepted that if at some point I need to walk, I'll walk. But I also accepted I'm not going out and I'm not going to burn myself, and I'm not just going to, crash and burn on this run. So I kept a steady pace the entire time. And that steady pace was peaceful. So when I finished it and realized, okay, then that opened some doors. What are my limits? Obviously not this. So in 2015, I would do my first marathon. And in my first marathon, I completed it in about almost 6 hours. But when I finished, I just always had that mindset, okay, of now what? And what running has taught me, along with the journey of the brain injury personally, and what I love about running is that, the longer you run, because you fall in love with it and it helps you with it scientifically. I mean, it helps with your endorphins and a whole bunch of different chemicals that help. And that's what helped me, with my depression and a lot of different things. But what I love about running is that with running, because the more you do it, you're going to have nicks and knacks. You're going to have things come up. And it's helped me and reiterated to me to take care of myself. But take care of myself when I feel the nick and knack. When I feel one thing off, it might be one little thing, but you've got to take care of that little thing now. So maybe it's stretching a little bit longer, or maybe it's going to bed a little bit sooner, or maybe it's changing up your diet, but do something little. Do not avoid it. Because again, a lot of us don't take care of ourselves until it's too late. Or if you've ever heard, that if you're thirsty and drink, you already are dehydrated, right? You're supposed to hydrate consistently. You're not supposed to hydrate when you're thirsty and, guzzling down the water, right? It's all about consistency. So with running and brain injury, the journey, it's take care of yourself right away. Take care of yourself. It might be little, but don't brush it off, because that little thing eventually is going to add up, and then you'll have something else worse. You'll end up with, throwing out your back or your knee, or something's going to happen that's off balance simply because it was off balance when it started. But you just chose to ignore it, or you just chose to not accept it. So that's the great thing about the running journey and the brain injury. Because I've improved in the brain injury, I've improved in the running, because the little things are going to work for you or against you. And the decision is for you to take care of those things when they're small. And that's going to be what benefits you in the long run.
That was awesome. That was amazing. Someone's there. Believe it or not, Benjamin, we're down the end of the show, but if someone wanted to email you and get hold of you, how would they do it?
Yeah, so my email is Ben underscore Hinton, Hinton, and it's 3123 at yahoo.com. So Ben underscore Hinton, 3123 at yahoo.com. And I'm on Facebook, and which is how we connected, and I'm so grateful for that. And then I do a lot of things on that, personal development and other things for encouragement. And but then also I try to be active, or I've tried to get more active on the other social media platforms, Instagram and TikTok. So on Instagram, it's just one word, but it's Benji, BENJIH 86, and that's my Twitter. But if anyone reaches out to me, email, I'd love to connect. And to me, a philosophy is to encourage others is to encourage ourselves. To love others is to love ourselves. So through this journey, which has not all been rainbows and butterflies, but it's the journey of that loving others, because when I didn't love myself, rooting for others, hearing others' inspirational stories, getting into personal development, doing things outside of myself because I didn't love myself, eventually cheering on other people, eventually doing those things, they became habit, and eventually I loved myself. So to love others is to love ourselves, because if you encourage someone, at some point, they're going to encourage you. And it's going to really create that circle of life, that love, because it starts within. So if you're in a season of your life that you're not loving yourself right now, then you need to encourage others. And when you do that, if you help enough people take with their bills, or if you help enough people with their problems, your problems will be taken care of.
Oh man, we're gonna end with that because that's awesome. That is a spiritual law that the greatest among you would be a servant. You want to excel and you're rebuilding your life after TBI, brain injury, help others. We,
Yes.
Benjamin, myself, others out there, help people. Use what's happened to you. Don't let labels label you. Don't be labeled. You have a purpose, a gift, your life a reason, your life a purpose. Benjamin, I want to thank you so much for being here. I keep talking to you, but we're at the end of the show. Thank you so much for being here, bro.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And again, it's part of the journey to have other people to ask, again, to encourage others. It's so encouraging, the words, the compliments you say, and motivates me, inspires me, and helps me to see, the things that I'm doing, the progress that I'm making, that it's more than just me. So I truly appreciate that, and having me on the show.
It's been a great to work with you. Thank you so much for being here today on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. And if anyone needs anything, please feel free to get in touch.
All right. Thank you, Jen.
Set me